Right, today we're talking wheel alignment on a Cayman GT4. If that sounds like your type of video, stick around. Hello there, welcome to another video from Max Revs. It brings me great pleasure to bring you my Cayman GT4 here at Centre Gravity. I was here, I made a 3-part series of videos in my 987 Gen 2, got that to perfection. I'm here with my 981 GT4 because I've put new tyres on. I'm now running Michelin PS4S and I have never paid for wheel alignment on this car myself, so who better to bring it to than the guys at Centre Gravity. We've done a trip this morning. Pete's basically taken the car out on the route that they know, and surprisingly he's a bit like, oh, your front steering doesn't sound too good to me, it doesn't seem like how a GT4 should be. And I'm like, well, it's the only GT4 that I've driven for prolonged periods of time. You know, I've driven the RS, the GT4 RS, I've driven a 718 GT4, but you know, not on these roads. And I'm just really surprised to hear the fact that they've said they're things that they think they could tune on the car. Now, I'm going to bring you some shots at the moment. On their pre-vehicle inspection check, they showed me the top mounts at the front. Just the bolt positions, they're way off. The bolts on the right hand side are completely different to the bolts on the left hand side, and you just kind of go, what's going on here? So I've never noticed this myself. We're going to go through everything that's up with this car. It kind of drove normal to me, but I thought now that I put brand new tyres on, that's the best time to get a full wheel alignment done. The guys are going to check it all out. I'll bring you all that information in this video, share it with you, and enjoying life and cars to the max. So stick around, we're going to learn a lot in this video. Now, the way the guys at Centre Gravity work is that they take your car out for a test drive prior to actually getting it set up on the Hunter Hawkeye, so this gives them a feel for how the car is handling on roads that they know. For the sake of bringing you new content, I didn't film that initial drive, but right now we're going to dig into all the issues that Pete found on my car after doing the test drive and after doing the initial readout on the Hunter Hawkeye. Let's get into it. Okay, hi, we've just done the road test with Pete. We've noticed those items I mentioned on my top mount, so I'm going to show you that now, and this is exactly what Pete was pointing out to me. This is the front left of the car. Just look at where these top mounts are, and you just look at the gaps over there and over there, and you can see obviously those bolts are right shifted towards the left. Now that's supposed to be symmetrical, ideally, for both sides of the car. Now look at the bolts on this side. I'll get my head out of the shadow. You can see look at the gaps on that side. Quite a lot of difference between how the top mounts are positioned, and actually you would want them to be pretty symmetrical. And at this point I'm going to pretty much hand over to Pete, because we've done the readout of basically the geometry of the car, which is kind of on screen over here at the moment.
Let me take that up.
Yep. And I'm going to get basically, we'll get Pete to talk about this now. We're just getting this car up on the ramp. Something that was very interesting to note is how the ramps are calibrated. Wheel alignment is completely useless unless you have a level ramp. So Pete was saying to me they calibrate these ramps pretty often. When these two yellow marks line up on those hydraulic pistons over there, that's when the ramp is level. And also, as you can see there, it's only level once the ramp locks into these metal kind of teeth, as you can see in there. So you cannot rest it on the hydraulics for it to be level. It's got to be resting on the teeth. That mark says the ramp is level. And this is kind of how my car looks. So I haven't properly introduced Pete. This is Pete.
Good afternoon.
He worked on my 987, did such a good job. I'm back here with my 981. So you've basically taken my car out for a road test. You spotted issues that I didn't pick up on. Maybe if you can just sort of talk us through how you found the ride handling, and now when you look at the numbers on the screen, how that matches up with your kind of experiences of the car.
Okay, so the first thing that we noted was with the steering wheel straight at 5 miles an hour on our industrial estate, the car, under its own accord, wanted to go to the right-hand side. So with the steering wheel straight, the car would go right. Building up a little bit of speed, 15, 20 miles an hour, I felt that the steering was quite vague and quite woolly, not as sharp and pinpoint as I would expect for a GT4. We then went out onto the dual carriageway, 50, 60 miles an hour, well within the limits of this car on that road. Left cambers and right cambers, relatively smooth, well surfaced, and the car hesitated to ever go left, where it would very, very quickly pick out a right camber. And if you went over a white line to overtake, for example, the car would snatch and it would pull you to the right-hand side. If you then kept yourself in the lane and used the throttle to either accelerate or decelerate, the car would nose on and off the throttle. I could actually get the car to change lanes just by accelerating without needing to touch any of the thing on the steering wheel. The faster you went, the more vague the steering felt, the less GT4 it felt, if you like. We then turned off that road and went down cheeky bit of bumpy B road, again 60 miles an hour. The car felt very unstable. You'd hit a bump and the car would lurch sideways. Again, predominantly if you went over the white line to have a look for an overtake, the car would actually move you a few inches either side. We've then brought the car back, and as Max has pointed out, the first thing we noted was the difference in the top mounts. So if we go straight into what that setting would be on the screen, that affects your front camber and some of your caster. Now the one on the passenger side, front left, we could see, based on how much slot was left on the hole, that the front left wheel had been pushed all the way in, hence the high negative camber value, where the one on the driver's side, on the front right, is kind of halfway down its range, not so much slot, and has got much less camber. And the difference between those two is one of the main culprits for why the car wants to go right, and the main culprit for why the car wants to snatch when it goes over a white line. As soon as this wheel gets a sniff of winning the race, it bullies the other one and the car will actually pull to one side. And as you can see from the rest of the screen, there's a few other issues along the way as well. So rear of car, front of car. Now bear in mind that this car has had wheel alignment quite recently. It's not what I would have expected to have seen. However, it does agree with what we found on the evaluation drive. And that's why we drive it first. So we want to find what's wrong with it. And we just want this to put numbers to that, if you like. So symmetry is king. And at the minute, there's not a lot of symmetry there. There's a big camber difference front and rear, not so big on the rear. Now remember that we're measuring this in degrees and minutes. So this measures it in 60 minutes in a degree. So whilst it looks like a big difference in numbers, the difference in the rear is actually only 11 minutes, where the difference in the front is 38 minutes. Now, potentially one of the reasons why we've got camber differences is because whoever did this car last time, their ramp wasn't quite as level as ours is. So they think that they've managed to get symmetry. However, if the car is on a slightly wonky ramp, this is where the asymmetry is crept in the cambers. It doesn't explain the asymmetry in the toes, but it would explain why there's differences in the cambers of the car.
Yeah, it's like the whole geometry process is all built on a solid foundation, literally.
Correct. Literally
and
a
without
foundation.
that ramp being level, everything else is a waste of time.
Correct.
Wow. Well, there you go. So I guess I'm going to let you sort of do your magic once you've now read this. So in terms of adjustment, you can adjust out all of this. Is that correct?
All of that on this car.
Fantastic. So I know with my 987, one of the things was not adjustable. I can't remember which one it was. Was it caster? That was it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'll let you do your work, and we'll come back later on and see how you've transformed the car. So thank you very much. Cheers. I can't believe that there was that much actually wrong with the car, and I didn't actually feel it or pick up on it. I do have a printout when the wheel alignment was last done. It's either changed massively since then through road use, or more, according to our suspicions, is unless your ramp is dead level, the whole wheel alignment process is a complete waste of time. If you don't have that level ramp, everything else is just out. We had a quick chat on the car. We actually have chosen to install shims on the front of the car, which is something you can do. We'll talk about that. They're Porsche shims, little blocks of aluminium that'll bring out the bottom of the car for caster. We'll talk to Pete about all the details. I cannot wait. New tyres on the car, new handling on the car. Oh, it's going to be amazing. I can't wait. I'll bring you all the detail with Pete's insight because he can explain this a lot better than me. So I just cannot wait to drive the car and put on some mileage now, enjoying life and cars to the max. See ya. So there you go, that's the end of part 1. Join me in part 2 of this video, which will cover all the work Pete did to correct the geometry of the car, and then finally join me in part 3 where I road test the car with Pete to assess how the car handles after it's had all this adjustment work done by centre gravity. Enjoying life and cars to the max.